Today, we're looking at a green ink by Herbin Lierre Sauvage, which sounds like a Sith Lord. I'm trying to force tickle. Force tickle. It's the opposite of a force choke. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you are in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then ink up this Nimicine Singularity with a fine nib. I write with it for a day. I then use it to take the notes for this video. I use 3 papers to standardize in some of my writing samples: Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There are additional writing samples that'll come later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice peppering of shading here. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading that's sort of going in reverse, where a lot of it's darker, but then you get lighter letters, where the extra fine was mostly lighter with darker letters. It's quite nice. Look at the word brown, the word fox, the word jumps. You see it all over. 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both do show us color variation left to right, and we do get it in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading going on here. 8 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 15 seconds to dry. Now that's why I say no real shading, because looking at the scrubby, the extra fine shows we should be able to get shading, but we don't. The medium shows none, and we got none. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some shading spots going on. There are some darker letters throughout it, just peppered a bit. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. There is tone variation within the writing. I don't even know that I want to call it shading, but look at how the word brown is certainly lighter than the word fox or the word quick. So it is there, just not tremendously. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, the medium does not, but both do show it in their own ways in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this gray at the bottom, and that gray is immediately getting into the filter paper and faintly forming a line. The rest is pushing its way up, and then we get the green that is this ink. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And in 10 minutes we see that that gray is really bonding with the paper. Not nearly as much of it is moving up. And in some areas we even see some water separation between the gray and the green ink. So that gray is really showing us what's about to become the hold-on color here. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation. That blew out, that got gross and disgusting. It's not a safe way to highlight in your notes with this ink. Now, water is lifting the green, but not that gray. So water looks like it's not going to completely remove this. If you go to pen flush, Strangely, pen flush looks like it's leaving more of it behind. That's just a matter of when I dab the paper towel, sometimes more of it just stays. It only took me water to get this out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper, but there's no need to use it to get it out of your pen. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Herbin Lierre Sauvage has a viscosity of 2.01, making it a wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Herbin Lierre Sauvage has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making it a very fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Herbin Lierre Sauvage, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I went with a nice purple, and I chose Private Reserve's Purple Mojo. The second writing sample is done on Field Notes, Fabriano, and Apica CD paper. Here we're looking at Field Notes paper. Yes, the 1.1 has bleeding going on through it. There's a minor bit of show through that's occurring with the medium, so not, but this isn't bad. This, again, this is a top flip notebook that this is out of. I don't see this as being too bad. The extra fine and the medium wouldn't stop me from using the back of the page. The 1.1 has feathering all over it, tiny feathering the entire way. It looks blurry, okay? It has no spread, halo sheen, no shade, nothing good about what's right there. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. Medium, same tone as the stub, sorry, just a little bit lighter than a stub. Lots of feathering all over it, tiny feathering, but all over it. No spread, halo sheen, no shade. I don't know why I marked it with an F instead of an M, but it's not, it's medium. 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation. We didn't get it in the writing. Fabriano. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading throughout this writing. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, the medium shows none, and that's what we got in the writing. And last up is Apica CD notebooks. Now, the 1.1 does have some bleed spots. That's about it. The others have no bleed, no ghosting. Just watch out for those super wet pens here. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading throughout this writing. Really peppered in there, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, nowhere near as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, still some very nice peppering of shading through here. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of both does show some color variation, far left to far right. The extra fine shows more than the medium, but it is there in both. And that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Herbin Lierre Sauvage? This is a very nice green on the page that does offer some nice shading. It is a bit lighter than I would prefer, but it's not a bad ink, so you just have to kind of weigh the tone of green that you would prefer. What nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? A medium to dry flow pen on a medium to broad nib really looks good and gives great shading. If you use a very wet pen, you're going to drown out the shading and you're going to wind up with sort of a plain Jane green, which will look much less interesting than any Sith Lord would use. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.